Okay, picture this. It's 1944. The world is tearing itself apart in war. But behind the scenes, the sharpest financial minds are already trying to build the peace. Now, you're probably imagining some grand, stately summit, right? All polished mahogany and serious faces. Well, what if I told you the future of the entire global economy was actually hammered out in a chaotic, seriously rundown hotel with a ballet dancer practicing in the hallways? Yeah, this is the absolutely wild story of Bretton Woods.
You see, the new global economic order didn't begin with some grand, orderly bang. It started as, well, a complete mess. Our story kicks off in this really remote corner of New Hampshire during the summer of 1944, and things got weird fast.
You heard that right. That sounds like the tagline for some bizarre movie, but it was the actual reality at the Mount Washington Hotel. The organizers, they only had a few weeks to get this place ready for a massive international conference, and it showed. The whole hotel was in total disarray, which set this incredibly strange stage for one of the most important economic meetings in history.
I mean, the atmosphere this created was just surreal. You had delegates trying to debate the future of global currency while literally dodging construction workers. And then you have Lydia Lopakova, who is a famous ballerina, just practicing her routines right there in the hallways, sometimes smack in the middle of official gatherings. It was this perfect storm of high-stakes global diplomacy and just pure, unadulterated chaos. And we're not talking about a small get-together here. No. We're talking 700 delegates from 44 different allied nations all descending on this tiny, totally unprepared town on July 1st, 1944. The hotel was completely overwhelmed, the locals had no idea what was going on, and the stage was set for some major drama.
So in the middle of all this, you've got three key figures who really defined the whole story. First, there's John Maynard Keynes. He was the brilliant British economist, and the press treated him like an absolute rock star. Then you had his wife, the ballerina we just mentioned, Lydia Lopakova, who just brought this wild, unpredictable energy to everything. And then there was Henry Morgenthau. He was the U.S. Treasury Secretary, a quiet guy, but a serious power broker, who came with a very, very clear agenda.
But let's be clear. Underneath all this craziness, the stakes could not have been higher. These leaders weren't just there to plan for the end of the war. They were trying to build a world where a catastrophe like this could never, ever happen again.
Right as the conference opened, a message from President Franklin D. Roosevelt was read aloud, and his vision was crystal clear. The only way to get lasting peace wasn't just through military victory, it had to be economic. He argued that if nations didn't work together to create a stable, growing global economy, they would just fall right back into the same old rivalries that lead to war.
And this slide right here perfectly illustrates the nightmare they were trying to prevent. The U.S. Treasury Secretary, Morgenthau, he laid it out in this really stark warning. He pointed straight back to the Great Depression of the 1930s, a time when countries just threw up trade barriers and basically tried to destroy their neighbors' economies to save their own. He called it economic warfare, and he argued that it was the direct prequel to the real warfare that followed. So for them, fixing the economy wasn't just about money, it was about preventing World War III.
But here's the thing. Not everyone came to that chaotic hotel with the same vision. The United States didn't just show up with a plan, they showed up with the power to make sure their plan became everyone's plan.
Remember our power players? Well, Morgenthau knew that Keynes, the British celebrity economist, could easily steal the show and control the narrative. So, in a pretty brilliant power play, Morgenthau arranged to have himself named president of the conference, and he gave the opening speech himself. This wasn't just about ego. It was about sending a loud and clear message from the second the conference started. America is running this show.
And America had this incredible ace up its sleeve to make sure everyone listened: Lend-Lease. This was the huge aid program that had been supplying Britain and the other allies with the weapons and resources they desperately needed to even stay in the war. It was, quite literally, Britain's lifeline. But there's always a but, right? That lifeline came with some serious strings attached. Specifically, this little clause known as Article 7. And what it said was that in return for all that life-saving aid, Britain had to promise to get rid of its special trading system with its own empire after the war. This was the bombshell hidden in the fine print. So that brings us to the British side of the story. They showed up in New Hampshire really hoping to build a post-war world as equal partners with the United States, but instead, they basically walked into a fight for their economic life. For Britain, those trade privileges with their empire, they weren't just nice to have, they were essential for survival. Their whole system, which was called imperial preference, basically created a big economic bloc where they could trade cheaply with countries in their empire. The American plan was designed to blow that entire system to pieces, forcing Britain into a wide-open global market where America held all the cards.
And this slide just lays the whole power dynamic bare. It's so stark. On one side, you have the U.S., the world's creditor, totally flush with cash and industrial might, aiming to create a brand new American-led world order. On the other side, you have Great Britain, the world's debtor, completely exhausted by war and just desperate to protect what little it had left. Their goals were in total opposition.
And in the end, hope and history are really no match for cold, hard economic reality. The conference was about to make official this massive shift in global power that had actually been building for decades.
The outcome was brutal, and it was clear. That dream of an equal Anglo-American partnership steering the post-war world, it was completely shattered right there on the floor of that chaotic New Hampshire hotel. The conference basically made it official. The torch had been passed.
So when the dust settled, the New World Order created at Bretton Woods had a very clear architect. American economic dominance was set in stone. The new rules of the game, open markets, the end of systems like imperial preference, would define the global economy for generations to come, and it was all on American terms.
And that leaves us with a really fascinating question to chew on. The whole stated goal of this thing was to end the kind of economic fighting that leads to actual fighting. But in reality, the agreement was born from a power play that saw one empire fall and another rise to take its place. So, did Bretton Woods really end economic warfare, or did it just hand the championship belt to a new contender? Something to think about.